Once upon a time, long, long ago, there lived a family of sheep farmers. Now, this family was a little bit unusual for its time because there were no boys in the family, it was just girls. And so that meant there were no boys to take over the family business. So the girls got to do things that most girls at that time never got to do. Now, the oldest daughter, her name was Mildred, and Mildred was the smart one, and she liked to study and read, and she was going to be a teacher one day. And the middle daughter, her name was Ruth Ann, and Ruth Ann, well, she wanted to be like their mother. She liked to cook and bake and clean the house and take care of the family. But the youngest daughter, well, her name was Grace, and Grace, well, she wanted to be a sheep farmer like their dad. You see, Grace would watch their dad go up into the hills with the sheep and the sheepdogs every day, and then she would see him come home at night, and he'd get to eat one of their mom's home-cooked meals and one of Ruth Ann's pies. And she just imagined that when he was up in that hilltop watching the sheep, he was probably taking naps and singing songs and just having a good time. She thought he had the best job ever. Well, one day, when Grace was old enough, her dad said, "Grace, I think you're old enough now that you can help watch the sheep." Oh, Grace was so excited. She was going to get to be a shepherd. So the next day, her dad sent Grace up to the hilltop with the sheep, and Grace got her turn at watching the sheep. And she started to watch them, and pretty soon she realized that watching sheep was not that exciting. I mean, all they did was eat grass and baa once in a while. In fact, watching the sheep was actually pretty boring. So the next day, Grace said to her dad, "Dad, I don't think the sheep really need me to watch them. They don't really do anything. And I think they could probably just watch themselves." Well, her dad, he said, "Grace, you're not there to watch the sheep. You're there to make sure that the wolf doesn't come into the herd and steal one of the baby lambs. Your job is very, very important." So Grace said, "All right, Dad, I understand. I will keep going in and watching the sheep." And so week after week, Grace went up and she watched the sheep, and it was still pretty boring, but she would find ways to occupy herself. She would hop around from hill to hill. She'd climb in the trees. She'd sing some songs. And one day she found herself in the top of the tallest tree, and she just started to say, "Wolf, wolf, 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 wolf!" And wouldn't you know it, someone down in the village heard her, and they just all grabbed their hoes and their broomsticks and their rolling pins, and they ran up the hill as fast as they could so that they could save the girl and the sheep. And when they got there, they saw Grace, and Grace was laughing at them. "I fooled you, I fooled you. Oh, it was so funny." Well, the villagers did not think that this was very funny. In fact, they were pretty mad at Grace. And when Grace went home, her mom and dad didn't think it was very funny either. And her mom sent her into the corner to think about what she did. And her dad, he gave her a spanking. And they both sent her to her room without any supper. Well, it took a while before the people of the village quit talking about the girl who called wolf while they were no wolf around, but eventually they did stop talking about her. And pretty soon, Grace's dad said, "Grace, you can go up and you can go ahead and watch the sheep again." And Grace was determined she was going to be good this time. She was not going to let anything happen to those sheep. And so she watched them, and she was being really good, but it was so boring. And one day, she couldn't help herself. She climbed up in a tree and she just said, "Wolf, wolf, 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 wolf!" And the villagers heard her again, and they grabbed their pitchforks and their broomsticks and their rolling pins, and they ran up the hill to save her. And when they got there, Grace was laughing at them again. I can't believe I fooled you again. Well, this time, everybody was mad at her, and they just gave her a real piece of their mind and said, "Grace, you just can't do this." And when Grace got home, her mom and dad were really mad, and her mom sent her to a room with no supper, and her dad, he gave her another spanking. Well, it took a while before everybody would forget about this incident, but they did. And it took a while before Grace's dad would trust her to go up and watch the sheep again, but he did. And so Grace got to go up one more time to watch the sheep. And when she did, she was determined she was going to be good this time. She was not going to do anything to make her dad mad. And she was watching the sheep, and it was getting to be a little later. Sun was starting to go down. And all of a sudden, she heard the sheepdogs go, "Woof, woof, woof." And then she heard the sheep, "Ba, ba, ba, ba," like they were going crazy or something. And she looked out into the sheep herd, and she saw a wolf. And the wolf was running around, and he was nipping at the heels of those poor sheep. And Grace was just so scared, she just didn't know what to do. And so she ran down the hill to get some people to help her. And she was saying, "Wolf, wolf, wolf, there really is a wolf this time." And everybody in the village ignored her. They just kept doing what they were doing. They kept eating their supper and talking about their day with each other. And Grace, she was just so upset. She went to the blacksmith and she said, "Really, really, you have to help me. You have to help me. There really is a wolf up there this time." And the blacksmith, he just shook his head and said, "Oh, Grace, you can't fool me again." And so Grace went back up the hill, crying and looking at her sheep and the ones that the wolf had gotten. And she sat up there until her dad came up and he saw the dead sheep. And Grace, she learned a valuable lesson that day. You see, if you always tell lies, pretty soon, when it's really important, when you need someone to believe you, they won't.